Good evening, Azeroth, and welcome to episode 169 of the World of Goldcraft. As usual, I'm your host, the Lazy Goldmaker of thelazygoldmaker.com, and I'm going to talk a little bit about gold making. Now, before we dive into that, the podcast is made available by my patrons that, amongst other things, can get access to my full TSM setup. So if you're interested in that, head over to patreon.com/thelazygoldmaker. So yeah, I'm back from another small hiatus, as I was on a little bit of a vacation last week and I couldn't record. I didn't have time to do it beforehand either. But we're going to talk a little bit about 9.2. And I think this is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, but you'll have to live with that. So 9.2 is now pretty much as fully operational as it will get. There's one very small aspect still missing from a gold making perspective, which is going to be the addition of double legendaries coming in 6 days time if you're on EU, or next week essentially. But outside of that, everything that's relevant from a gold making perspective is now out. We also have like flying in Sereth Mortis now. Everything is available. So what have we seen so far from the patch? Well, unsurprisingly, legendaries have been the big gold makers so far. I made 21 million the first week you could craft rank 7 legendaries. That was quite profitable. And 262 gear also did pretty well. One thing I was interestingly a little bit wrong about or underestimated is exactly which slots players would prioritize for their legendaries. Because everyone prioritized non-tier slots, which makes sense. Very much sense in retrospect. I should maybe have realized this ahead of time. That even if it's optimal long term to have your legendary on your helmet, until you get your 4-piece and you get all 4 tier pieces that's not on the helmet slot, then you're going to want to prefer to have your legendary on a belt or a bracer or somewhere that doesn't conflict with tier pieces, so you can get your tier set bonuses online as soon as possible. Because this is going to maximize the chances of you getting your tier set. Now, this didn't matter much because my preparation was mostly in terms of materials and not crafting specific items, so I would just craft more of whatever was actually selling. So it didn't really matter, but it did mean that slots like capes, rings, belts, boots have sold a lot better than I was sort of expecting, and some of the slots that I thought would be good have not been as good, even though I've seen sales across all slots. I've been selling all of the legendaries. I think that will eventually start changing. Legendary prices are going down very rapidly, which means that the cost to recraft, move your legendary to a more optimal slot once you have your all 5 pieces of tier loot at a certain eye level. We might see that shift, but at that point, legendary prices will probably have gone down even more from the current level. Double legendaries is the other thing that's coming. And what I'm expecting is that we'll see an absolute ton of demand for belts and boots, and realms probably running dry of those. And then maybe some helmets and chest pieces for players who already have tier sets. They might choose those slots instead. Yeah. So overall, I don't think it's going to drive the market, but it is definitely going to clean the auction house out of those specific slots. So belts in particular, since they come with a guaranteed socket. And there aren't enough belts on the auction house, but the barrier to entry to crafting some more belts if you're already in the market is very, very low. So expect the auction house to have short-term supply issues, particularly just after the chapter is available and people can unlock Unity and get crafting with it. But it's going to come down to normal fairly soon after that, and then we should see the eventual just slow decline of prices in the legendary market, just as we saw with rank 6s. In fact, rank 7 legendaries have gone down in price very, very rapidly, because Progenitor essentia is relatively fast to farm, apparently, relative to how many we need, and there's not that many. There's no longer the reset and things like that, so you're not capped to how many you can craft. Not sure how much that matters, but it meant that we were a lot more front-loaded, and the prices have gone down very much faster than rank 6 prices went down. So that's going to be interesting. For me, what I'm planning to do for the next reset is to try to get one more rank 4 belt recipe ready on Sylvanas, and then I'm just gonna be crafting belts and selling those and trying to make as much gold as I can with that. I'll also probably be more active in the 262 gear market, because with now Progenitor Essentia prices going down, the crafted 262 gear is extremely profitable and just very, very good right now. I might even go into the 233 gear market. Not sure. Depends a little bit on if we can if TSM will start supporting the Progenitor enhancement extra optional reagents, which are now getting very, very cheap, and I feel are an absolute necessity to get sales. So yeah, the big thing this week was that we saw the addition of flying, which meant that it's now more efficient or more enticing to farm Progenitor Essentia. So prices have gone down, started going down, and supply is going up, and that trend is just going to continue. We might see a short-term blip the other way when we get double legendaries, but that's not going to last long. And then we're in the inevitable slow demise, slowly prices going down, most likely for the rest of the expansion, unless they make some major changes in 9.2.5, which seems very unlikely. Interestingly, this also means that a lot of the new zone materials are now quite cheap. They've gone down in price a lot. Which means that the balance of cost between vestiges and crafters marks has likely changed. For instance, blacksmithing is now generally, at least on my realms, cheaper than jewel crafting, whereas it was the other way around earlier, when Progenitor ore was expensive. Now with Progenitor ore getting as low as 12 gold on Draenor, using 30 more Progenitor ore is just nothing. It's so cheap compared to the price of essences, which are quite expensive for jewel crafting. So that's nice, and with Progenitor Essentia prices falling, it's now a little bit easier to compete in the legendary market, even if you didn't stock up heavily on Essentia when they were cheap, because now they're pretty much going to be at the same price point as people who stocked up. Like me, I bought most of mine at an average price of 10,000, and the price is now around 12,000, so I'm not that much cheaper than anyone else anymore, so I'm competing on mostly the same level as anyone else. So that's good, essentially, or good for people who are already in the market. The one thing I definitely learned is that preparation is important, and being able to go hard at the beginning of a patch, at least with the structure of how Shadowlands has been gold making wise, with legendaries being extremely expensive but also being extremely front loaded. I could only cancel scanned like pretty hard on Wednesday. I also don't really like cancel scanning. And then I didn't cancel scan much from Thursday to Sunday, which was essentially the prime gold making part of the patch. The most profitable week you would have this patch by a very significant margin. And I didn't utilize it well enough. I still have tons of materials left over. I didn't manage to sell off all my Progenitor Essentia even. I still have Progenitor Essentia, but I did make a lot of gold or save a lot of time at least by preparing. I just have materials lying about. I don't have to think about buying more materials. I literally just log on my crafter and restock whatever's run out, and then back to my poster and getting them out onto the auction house. Which has just saved me so much time and made it way more effective for me to keep all of the stuff I want to keep on the auction house out there. So if we're looking into the crystal ball, I think this expansion, well, the major extreme profits are obviously over, but there's still plenty of gold to be made. I think catch-up gear, the 233, 262 gear is going to be very good. I think rank 7 legendaries will likely be profitable for quite a while, but with lower profit margins across the board. And both prices and profits going down as usual when markets pass their peak timing. And I'm a little surprised at how quickly the prices have fallen, how cheap they have gotten, with already passing 50k on Draenor. But that it is what it is. Progenitor Essentia is apparently quite effective to farm, and when materials go down in price, then the finished items are also going to go down in price. So I think Blizzard learned some lessons from Corythite crystals, because having legendaries be as expensive as they were in 9.1 for as long as they were expensive, it is probably bad for the game overall. It's obviously really good for us gold makers, but it's pretty bad for casuals. They're gonna feel locked out. It might be good for Blizzard, it might drive token sales, but it's also gonna drive people a little bit away from the game. It's not in Blizzard's best interest to have things be that expensive. It's better if they can buy a token and get like 2 to 3 legendaries and some consumables. That's gonna now seem a much better deal. You're now gonna feel like buying a token gives you more value, whereas back in 9.1 it would maybe get you 1 legendary, and that's just not that much value. Yeah, I think Blizzard actively wanted to make legendaries cheaper this patch, and they've succeeded. They are a lot they're a lot cheaper than they were in 9.1, and that's gonna be a case forever. So that was pretty much what I had for this week. Not that much. It's a little bit of a shorter episode. I was a little busy after getting home, so hopefully we can get a more full one next week. If you're enjoying this, make sure you leave a like or a comment, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching, and have a profitable week.